So welcome back to Sprague River Homestead. Today we're going to talk about deciding between buying bare land or buying a developed piece of property and developing it into your dream. Now, one of the great things about homesteading is the feeling of independence. It is the advantage that you are taking upon your life about doing for yourself and not worrying about everybody else. One of the great things of that is everybody has the dream, or a lot of people have the dream, of buying bare land and doing it all themselves. And that is a great dream. People do quite often, honestly, get themselves into trouble because they honestly just bite way off more than they can chew. And bare land may be a bad idea for you. So now if you look behind us, a piece of our property is undeveloped. There is absolutely nothing there. A lot of people are going to look at that and just see plain bare land full of sagebrush, but I guarantee the homesteaders watching this are going to see that as unlimited opportunity. Now, one of the great things out there with opportunity means that you can do anything you want as long as you can afford it and your building codes allow it. The hard part of that is there is absolutely no infrastructure for you to live out there.
Right, and no infrastructure means there's nothing. So if you're going to buy a piece of bare land and start homesteading on it, you're going to have a place to live. Now, some people go out and they put a yurt up, they get a fifth wheel, they get a motorhome, they get a camp trailer, and they move out to a piece of property and they say, I'm going to have a house built in 6 months, and 2 years later, they're still living in the fifth wheel. It happens. So what you're going to have to tell yourself is, while this bare land may be pretty, you really are going to have somewhere else to live while you get it ready to actually live on it. We know some people that did not do this. They brought in a fifth wheel in September, October. They knew they were going to have to winter in it, but they weren't worried. We listened to the whole story. By June, we'll have a house. It's been 2 years, and they still live in the fifth wheel.
It's actually been 3 years.
You're right. It's been almost 3 years. Money did not happen the way they thought. They had an existing house up in Washington State, which is about 8 hours from where we are, and they were not worried. They were going to sell that house, piece of cake, and start building. By the time that the house sold, they had lost so much money continuing to pay the mortgage and doing temporary fixes to stay living down here that now they don't have enough money to actually build the house. So there is definite benefits to buying a piece of property that already has a house, a septic, maybe electricity, even if you're planning to go off grid at some point, a starting point, a place to lay your head at night, and one less thing to stress about. It's something to consider.
You would not believe the feeling of security knowing you have a house to sleep in, whether it's beautiful and ready to go as you want, but it keeps you out of the weather other than sleeping in an RV for years to come while you build the dream.
When we went to start homesteading, we wanted to be out in the middle of nowhere, which we are. We were lucky enough to get an early inheritance from my parents with a house. This house is nowhere near where we want it to be. It's really pretty rustic. It's been a vacation house before we got here. But for us, bringing the farm animals and a number of other things from Mississippi when we moved here, it was exactly what we needed. We had a roof over our heads. We had a water system, even though it was just a cistern pumping in the house. I could take a shower at night. I could have somewhere dry to lay my head when there was 2 feet of snow and pounding rain outside. And it gave me that little bit of sense of security that, yes, the house is not done, and it's a long-term project. 4 years in, we're still remodeling the house. But we could focus on the homestead goals, which for us was raising our own food, whether, for animals and for gardening. And it gave us a chance to focus on that and not have to worry just about getting a roof over our heads.
So something we've already said, I don't know how many times, multiples at this point, is money. Now, homesteading honestly costs money, and the great thing about financing is they love to finance real homes. So while bare land looks very enticing because it's low investment initially to get the land and all that stuff, a lot of times a bank does not want to finance a bare piece of land unless you have building plans and basically the whole kit and caboodle to go with it. They will, on the other hand, be more likely to finance an existing home that you can build your homestead around. So you've got low cost on the front end with the land, maybe a higher investment with a house, but it's kind of like we talked about. It's a 30 to 40 year investment a lot of times. So what's going to be the better for you over that term? Cheap with a lot of stress, or more expensive, less stress, and I have plenty of opportunity to focus on the things that really matter, where it's not putting in a toilet on a Sunday afternoon.
And when it comes to financing on bare land, do keep in mind that the few companies that will actually do it, more often than not, it's not a true like mortgage. It's usually a personal loan. So your interest rates are usually a little bit higher. Also, what's usually happening is, they're going to want some kind of collateral, right? Which is the property. So you'll get a personal loan against the piece of property you're buying. But they're not going to give you a loan for the other things that you've got to have, like a septic system or solar panels or whatever that is. Putting your water system in. In our country where we're at right here, wells are deep. We're 300 feet? Our neighbors are 600 feet in. They've spent $15,000 on their well plus their pump. That's stuff you've got to come out of pocket if you're going to buy bare land. If you've got money, if you did what we did coming out of Mississippi, where we sold a house and we had the extra cash, we knew we'd have to do some of that going in. But that's the exception and not the rule. Most people don't have those kind of extra funds. But if you go and you buy a property that's already got a house on it, a lot of times it's already got a septic system, even if it needs some replacement or pumping. It's usually got some kind of water going to it. So you've got that kind of stuff already into one neat little package where a bank will give you a mortgage loan that's usually not a really high interest rate. So that's another reason to consider maybe looking at a developed property instead of the bare land. So another thing to consider when it comes to getting a place that's already developed is the size of the house. And people who don't have never actually built a house may not realize how important the size actually is. We've got this tiny house movement, and I'm sure, some of you watching may be doing the tiny house thing, and that's fine. And maybe that works for you. But if you're trying to work towards self-sufficiency, the thing I see on a lot of groups that talk about, I live in a tiny house, food storage, especially if you can, or freeze your own meats, that kind of thing, space becomes a huge, huge issue. And I keep seeing these tiny house people who, they've got a 300 square foot house, but they had to build a 300 square foot building out back to house their food storage. I can't tell you how much of a pain this is. It's different if you're root cellaring. If you've got a root cellar that's 300 square feet and that's where you're going to store your food, hey, good on you. But if you're building another above ground structure that's 300 square feet just to store your food, I don't think you've really thought this out. Especially where we live, and freezing is an issue, which means for us, we've got our food storage pantry out in our shop because, like I said, the house was already here and it's not as big as we'd like it to be, but I've added a lot of storage in the house. The storage that I've got outside, sometimes I have to run a heater in the winter to keep it above freezing. In Mississippi where we lived, we had a freezer out in the garage, and the garage was 115 degrees in the summer. So it was very difficult on the freezer. You couldn't store anything else outside. So when it comes to building a house, you really need to take all that into consideration. If you're buying a house that's already there, at least you've got, if you tell yourself you need 300 square feet and you buy 1,000 square foot house, hey, you've got extra room and you can put in extra food storage and extra stuff. And I'm telling you right now, if you've got extra space, you'll find a way to use it. I've never met anybody who says I've got empty space and we do nothing with it. So you're better off with a bigger house or just a house that's already there. You don't have to worry about it, and the options become almost endless. So the other great thing about buying a place that's already got a house is that the building codes at least have been met for that building. depending on where you are in the country, here in the Pacific Northwest, building codes seem to be an ever-evolving thing.
Mm-hmm.
In the 4 years we've been here, things have changed. Since 15 years ago when my parents put our house in, building codes have changed to the point that none of the property around us is actually buildable. So I see this a lot where people buy bare land. They tell themselves, well, I'm going to buy the land, I'm going to pay it off, and in 5 years I'm going to build my house. They get 3-4 years into it, building codes have changed. Now they can't build on it. Or you get a piece of property like what we've got our neighbors on. The neighbors bought a piece of property that's double agended in to where it was owned long enough by the previous owner to currently be buildable. But they had a very short window of like 10 years. They didn't buy the property until that thing had been in for already 6 years, which gave them 4 years left to build on it. Currently, they're down to like 1.5 years left to get built. And you don't want to do that to yourself and back yourself into a corner. At least if you've got a house that's on the property, you've got options. You can remodel. If the county won't let you build it any bigger, hey, at least you've already got a house on it. For us, I would love to make the house a little bit bigger. The county's not going to let me do it because they've already ruled that everything in our zone is not buildable. So we may not be able to get it any bigger, but hey, I've already got a house, which means I'm set. I'm here for life. This is my house, and they can't do anything about that. So be very, very careful. What's buildable today may not be buildable in 5 years. So it's another reason to really consider a property that's already got a home in place.
So remember this as we're going to close up here. Remember that you have 3 things that you are really concerned about in homesteading. First is food, second is water, and the third one is shelter. If you're going to buy bare land, you start with 0 most likely. So all of your attention is going to be split at least 3 ways into food, water, and shelter. Buying an existing home, you most likely have shelter probably taken care of for at least the temporary until you turn it what you want. You most likely have water, or a pretty good option of how to get water quickly, which means you can put a lot of your attention on that food, which is probably why you're homesteading. You want to grow your own food and store your own food.
I got nothing.
So the question is bare land better than developed property? And the answer is not necessarily. It's really up to you, because this is your own choose your own adventure. But these are some ideas that we've been kicking around back and forth, seeing the movement over the last few years, and we thought we're going to try and give this out to you guys to see what you think about it. So, what do you think? Bare land, developed property that you can turn into your own dream? What do you think is better? That's it for Sprague River Homestead. We'll see you next time.